So one can convene, one can work through partnerships and networks. That helps you attract and retain the best people who want to work for companies like that. And you can do more through a partner set than you could do alone. And in fact, smaller and mid-sized companies need those partners just to do business. But now if you're coming to them with a value proposition, you'll get better partners. And so now the biggest investor in Honest Tea is Coca-Cola. And we'll see if they do a Unilever on Ben & Jerry's with Honest Tea. But the fact is, one of the things Coca-Cola said to Honest Tea is, we want to learn from your culture. Coca-Cola needs a lot of change, as the sugar water business is not as big as it once was. And so now they have a small company that might help infuse the larger company. Now that's tough and it's tricky and it's idealistic because big companies are big, and so the elephants can trample the grassroots pretty easily. But still, again, if we all advocate for this kind of leadership, we'll see it pop up many more places, and nobody's too small not to be a player, or at least not to have their own sense of purpose about what's important to life, and where do I serve. And as long as we're grounded in that, I think our culture in this country will shift just a little, and it might have some people think twice before they scam somebody else. Not to mention any particular scammers.
Professor Kanter, with respect to value-based leadership, what strategies did these supercorps use to sustain a value base in times of crisis?
Sustaining a values base in a time of crisis is critical. In fact, it's one of the ways you sustain yourself in a time of crisis, is by saying what we're doing is important, and we can't let it go. I mean, you know, I don't believe that the law firms that are all breaking apart right and left or selling themselves ever had a sense of the importance of their partnership and what they did together, because they can fall apart too easily. So those who have values and purpose can hold together, cohere more easily in tough times, because they have a view about the important purpose they serve. They have things they can do. So McKinsey, a great consulting firm, they had some very challenging times out of one of their offices where there was no work recently in the beginning of the recession. But rather than causing people to flee, I mean, that's a consulting firm with a pretty strong set of values and purpose and very, very high professional standards, and they do pro bono service, etc. So they ended up not just doing community service, they contributed consulting teams to their clients that were hurting without charging for it. Now, you can only do that up to a certain point, but their concern, like that IBM value that says dedication to every client's success, didn't suddenly go away just because somebody couldn't pay them anymore. And it was a way to enhance the values of the firm and be ready for a turnaround. And so, of course, who's going to be turned to first, unless we believe people are so ultimately cynical they'll take a free good and then go put their business somewhere else, in which case we can shame them out of it. We don't use shame enough, by the way, as a tool in all of these things. So I think that they sustain their values by reminding people of the values. They sustain their values by continuing to have conversations about why are we together and what do we care about, and that we want to build the firm. We want a future together, as opposed to this is just careerism, and if there's not a job for me, I'll go someplace else. And so that's one answer. Keep doing the things you do in good times, and that will sustain us. That's what many people turn to after 9/11, is what's really important in life. What do we really care about in our work? Everyone loved Kanter Fitzgerald for caring about the people first. Procter & Gamble, one of the stories from Egypt is after the war in Lebanon. The general manager didn't even think twice or ask for permission, just evacuated all the people immediately. And in fact, offered to evacuate because people live in families. Three additional people for every employee they evacuated because they were so concerned about the people. So You just act in ways that are consistent with the values. And I think it sustains us. It reminds us, again, of what's important in life and not just and keeps us going through difficult times.
The state of Ohio is about to embark in a new industry here, the gaming industry. And we voted on casinos. What advice would you give to the people in this room, to our government, and to the Gaming Commission as to proceed in a way that would incorporate all the things that you would want? And I'll give you 3 minutes to do that.
Yeah, far be it from me in about a minute and a half to comment on a big change. But first of all, you definitely want clean casinos. I think the standards for who gets the license have to be very carefully crafted to make sure that the casinos are taking end-to-end responsibility for the potential costs that are associated with this. First of all, it's fun. You know, there's nothing wrong with fun industries. They only turn into sin industries when the fun industry isn't taking responsibility for the fallout from the fun. And so I would like to know what they would be doing about addiction, compulsive gambling, what they would be doing about to make sure that people aren't bankrupting themselves. You know, I would like to know I would ask a lot of questions. If I were on the Gaming Commission, I would have very stringent standards, and I would set a national model, even if you think you're going to lose business right away. I'm on the board of the Massachusetts Convention Center Authority. Massachusetts, we get a lot of meetings from pharmaceutical companies who, because of a very strict Massachusetts law, can't do giveaways even of coffee mugs from pharmaceutical companies to doctors, and yet we have all these medical meetings, and we did get 2 meetings canceled because the associations count on the giveaways that are now banned in the gift law. And so, you know, we talked about it for a while because, again, like Procter & Gamble, Children's Safe Drinking Water, you're making choices and trade-offs, and you don't want to walk away from business. But ultimately, we said our goal is we've got to make sure that the country passes a standard that's as high or higher. So now what you have to do in Ohio is you have to work to make sure that every other state, that you get some national standards. If you set very high standards, that you get national standards so you're not at a competitive disadvantage by having high standards. That instead you want to race to the top, not the bottom. And so I would get those politicians moving on national gaming laws and what are we going to do about the fallout that can come from that. Even brings in revenues, entertaining, can be clean family entertainment. Las Vegas is now, I guess, a very cleaner city. I don't know personally or firsthand, but I would say that's the thing. You take end-to-end responsibility and you press hard for a high national standard. The reason the companies I talk about are forces for raising standards sometimes in the U.S. and in other countries is because if they're operating by those standards, they want other people to operate by them too.
Today at the City Club of Cleveland Forum, we have been listening to Rosabeth Moss Kanter, Arbuckle Professor of Business Administration at Harvard University. Thank you, Rosabeth. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. This forum is now adjourned.